Hello and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, the podcast where we rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy, Only Fools and Horses. I'm Jenny, and I'm joined today from Hong Kong by my co-host and sister, Heather. Say hello, dude.
Hello, Jenny. Today we are discussing Series 1, Episode 4, the second time around. So grab a blackcurrant and pernod, and let's get started.
This episode aired on the BBC at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, 29th of September, 1981, incidentally the same week as Mom's 27th birthday. Still airing in the same spot between the Rockford Files and the 9 o'clock news. We have the same UK #1 song and movie again this week. Still Prince Charming by Adam and the Ants and still The Omen 3. So we're looking forward to some changes coming soon. Good old England. A few little bits of trivia this week. So John Sullivan got the original idea for this episode from an agony aunt page in one of his wife's magazines about somebody still being in love with their ex-partner. So he thought he should start to explore Del's love life a little bit and the effects that might have on the Trotter family. So we do have an interesting twist in this episode that it's actually more about Del's love life, which is the first time we see that. The idea for the Auntie Rose element of the story came from a trip that John Sullivan took to Ireland, where he was talking to an elderly uncle of his, and he realised that the uncle thought he was his own dad. So the episode is actually the first time we get to see Del fly pitching, and interestingly, Rodney, who we don't see doing much selling after this. And another first for this week, this episode marks the first appearance of some of Del's ridiculous pajamas. So we know we see many different iterations of those over the years, so... Trivia-wise, that's all I have for this episode, dude. So, shall we move on to our weekly episode rankings?
Okay, yeah, sure, let's do that. So you might know the drill by now if you've been listening to our previous episodes, but prior to recording, we have each independently ranked all 64 episodes of Only Fools and Horses, and as we go through the episodes each week, we're going to reveal and compare our rankings for each episode. So I don't know Jenny's rankings and she doesn't know mine. So let's start with your ranking, dude. What did you give this episode out of 64?
Okay, so my ranking for this one is 42. Okay.
Pretty high.
I did rank this one pretty high. Yeah, how about you?
So what are your reasons for that?
Well, actually, it's the one I remember the most from Series 1. So when I was originally doing my rankings, it ended up above all the others. I think I've watched this one probably more than any of the other episodes in Series 1. And that might be because when I was a kid, this is a storyline I would be more like interested in. It's a relationship, love storyline. And as a kid, the other storylines were not as interesting to me. So I know I watched this one for that reason. But now I do actually think, I like this episode. It gets back to the old original Only Fools and Horses feel from Cash and Curry being a bit different last week. I think it's funny. I like the fact that you've got all the three trotters together quite a lot in this episode. So, but it is still lower than Big Brother on my overall rankings now, because I just think Big Brother is just a little bit slightly better of an episode than this, but not by much.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I agree with a lot of your points, actually, that this was one of the episodes that I also found myself watching the most out of season 1. I didn't really watch season 1 that often, not on repeat anyway, when we did get the VHSs. And yeah, I agree with the reasons, probably because there was something about the Pauline character that I found really interesting to watch. Maybe because she's this kind of villain, and the way that she interacted with Rodney. This is the first time I saw Rodney really hating someone, and I thought that was an interesting dynamic, I guess, to watch. It was more drama, I guess, than we're used to seeing in Only Fools and Horses to this point. So that was all very interesting. I actually ranked this as 50 out of 64. So it is one of my higher season 1 episodes for the ranking. Most of my season 1 episodes are lower. So I think that this is... Yeah, it's a solid episode. I agree. It has some really interesting views into Del's personality. This is the first time we see that Del is an absolute sap for romance and for love. It's touched upon in other episodes, obviously, when he talks about how often he's been engaged. And I think this is the first time we get all that as well, or that history of Del's engagements, or at least we get to hear about the fact that he may have been engaged to a few different women in the past. Of course, later on, it's made out to be hundreds of different women. I'm not sure how true that is, but yeah, so it's interesting to get that, and again to see how quickly Del dives in with 2 feet first into this put this relationship with a woman that he broke up with, and we find out in the episode he was only with her for a month or something like that. So yeah, it's very interesting to see that side of Del's personality, because we haven't seen that yet, but we get to see it a lot more later on. How about the IMDb ranking for this one? What was that out of 64?
Yeah, so this one is really low. This is number 61 out of 64 on IMDb.
Wow.
I don't know the exact reason. I did read the 4 user reviews that are on IMDb. They're pretty much like, yeah, they're saying that, I think it sounds like they just think it's overall a very weak episode. Like the storyline's not very good. They think too much time is focused on the Auntie Rose part, and that I think people just don't like the Pauline character, which I do understand. Like, of course, she's meant to be hated, but
that's why I liked it, though. I like to watch those sorts of characters. Those villainous characters are always more interesting.
I mean, I think a lot of people would agree that, like, say, Roy Slater is a very, like, well-remembered villain, and everyone likes the episodes with him. So you can't say it's about villains. I think the way that she's a villain, though, is just that she's just a bitch. And I totally get
that's
that, like,
really interesting.
It's interesting maybe to us from a different point of view, because we're women, whereas men are just going to hate her, aren't they? So yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
But we'll touch upon that a little bit more.
I mean, anyone who tries to break up the Trotters seems to always get dealt a bad hand with regards to favorability, because of course everyone loves the 3 of them together. So I think that's probably why Raquel and Cassandra got some flack as well later on, because everyone loves the idea of the 3 men together. You know, nothing can break that.
That's true.
So I think that's probably
But at
why.
least, yeah, Raquel and Cassandra never try to stop Del and Rodney from seeing each other. They're never mean to Albert or Grandad.
No,
but
of course
yeah,
not.
This happens in lots of TV shows. Like, it starts off with an all-male cast, and then like they'll start bringing in wives and girlfriends, and people tend to think that the show gets weaker after that.
Yeah,
but you
that's
know,
true.
John Sullivan accepted it, I think, after he did Dates, or around the time he decided to do Dates, and that is that he had to grow the Trotters up and start putting them into longer term relationships, because they're getting older, and if he wants them to have that kind of progression of their life, there needs to be more of a long term female presence or a relationship presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense as well, because Del obviously wants to get married. It's evident even from this episode, this is something he strives for, something he wants in his life.
Yeah, and there's this constant struggle, because they're always talking about women and dating and finding girls and stuff, that either one of them gets into a relationship, that the other is going to be threatened, because this is their small, tight-knit family, and, you know, they're probably not going to like each other's partners. I wonder if that's why Del always ruins all of Rodney's romantic encounters in the first couple of series. He always comes in and like puts the fire out pretty quickly and stuff. So,
well, that's what Rodney accuses him of as well. So yeah, interesting. Yeah. So shall we go ahead and start with the episode breakdown?
Yeah, let's dive right in. So just to reiterate, we're both watching and taking notes from the uncut original versions of these episodes. So we're starting with the original opening credits with that theme tune written by Ronnie Hazelhurst. And if you're anything like me, you might have noticed one difference in the early series is that the title itself does not appear on the screen until after the music ends, which is something that changes in the future. You notice in the very later episodes, especially, it starts appearing panning up over the Trotter flat of Nelson Mandela House. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yes. It's also a different colour, if I remember correctly, as well. It's like orange or something in the season 1.
In the later series. It's really big in the first series. I don't know if you noticed that. It's like, whoa, it's so massive. Okay, so we open in a London street market. It's great to see this for the first time. Lots of hustle bustle, crowd of punters around Del, which will be a very familiar scene for all the longtime fans of the show, since this is something we get to see a lot of in the future. But this is the first time.
Yeah. So
fly pitchers and market traders in general were the main inspiration for the character creation of Del. So we're actually getting to see him in his element now, which is what he does best. And we do see Rodney doing some selling here.
Come on in, get in while the going's good. We are not here today, gone tomorrow. We are here today, gone this afternoon.
Which we'll all know is not something that continues. As his character develops, he just becomes sort of a lackey for Del. He's often acting as the lookout or his mannequin for dressing him up in outfits and making him do stupid stuff.
Yes.
But this early showing of the market is one of the first times and the only times we get to see him fly pitching alongside Del. So they're trying to sell some lace hankies to a crowd of ladies. Del says,
There you are. They're a pleasure to have the flu with. Thanks, love.
Now hurry up, girls. Get in while the going's good. It's one for the price of two. One for the price of two.
which nobody seems to notice. So Del says he's...
I do. I definitely notice.
Yeah.
I love it though. I love that part doesn't even get a laugh. Like, no, it's almost like even the people on the laugh track didn't notice that mistake because no one laughs when he says it.
It's a subtle little thing, but it's definitely there. I wonder if he even realized what he was saying. Good old Rodney. Yeah, I don't know whether it's trying to show that he doesn't know what he's saying or whether the punters don't. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to get.
It certainly makes it understandable as to why Del took him off the selling later on.
Yeah, and he's not very good at bullshit. He's not very good at like the pitch essentially. So yeah, maybe we're seeing this and but Del doesn't seem to say anything to him in this case, but maybe we're just seeing how bad he is so that we know in the future this is why he's not up there doing the performance, because essentially fly pitching is performing. And that's what John Sullivan saw in the markets when he was younger, and that's what inspired the character. He loved the fly pitching, like the performance, the way everyone gathered around. So we know Rodney's not good at it.
I'd love to play a fly pitcher in an acting performance. For those of you that don't know, I am actually a professional actress. I've done some professional acting, and I'm a trained actress as well, so it'd be really cool to do a part like that, to have that sort of bolshy character. I think it'd be very fun to play a part like that. I'm sure that both Nick Lyndhurst and David Jason very much enjoyed their roles.
Yeah, and we're not seeing Del in his element here doing the big performances yet. We see more of that later on, but this is just a very, I am a little bit surprised that he didn't put fly pitching into the pilot, but considering this is one of the main inspirations for the character, that he didn't use that as a way to hook people into the premise of what they are. He doesn't do any selling really. This is the first time we're seeing them in the market. But yeah.
Do you know what it is though? I think in the just to say, I think in that episode Big Brother, when he does that speech to Rodney.
So we don't pay VAT. We don't pay income tax or national insurance. On the other hand, we don't claim dole money, social security, supplementary benefit, do we, eh? Eh? The government don't give us nothing, so we don't give the government nothing.
That was almost like he was performing for Rodney and giving Rodney the bullshit that he would give the punters. I guess that was a good sort of substitute for the scene in the market, if there wasn't going to be a scene in the market in the first episode.
Yeah, I can totally understand that point of view, but I do think that when you're trying to, in a pilot, usually everything is insanely in your face. Like this character is a fly pitcher, so here he is, fly pitching. This character is, an angry person, so let's have him have a few meltdowns and get angry. Like pilots are usually your chance to really define the characters, and they do that in Big Brother, but it's just strange. I would have thought maybe Big Brother should have opened like this. So to continue, Del says,
Keep taking the money, Rodney. I'm going to pop down the pub to get a lemonade for the old Hobson.
So he leaves the market. So we're cut to the Nag's Head. Back to the Nag's Head for the first time since Big Brother. Trigger's at the bar along with Joyce. The bar's quite crowded. So Del sort of slinks up through the crowd and he joins Trigger at the bar.
Hey! All right, Trig.
Hello, Del boy. How's your luck?
Oh, you can have it for a nicker.
So this is going to be the last time we see Joyce, incidentally. So she's only been in 2 episodes. Aww. Shame. I think at this point you would have thought regular barmaid is going to happen, but it didn't.
I quite liked her. I thought her voice was funny and her mannerisms were funny as well.
Yeah, she's funny. So so this is where Del orders.
And I'll have blackcurrant and Pernod.
That's what I used to call it.
Yeah,
as
a kid, I didn't ever get any of the alcohol related jokes as a kid. I had to have Dad explain them to me. But obviously, yes, it's not Pernod, it's Pernod. So immediately
Can I just say that would taste disgusting as well? Blackcurrant and Pernod, that would be horrible. Because Pernod to me tastes horrible on its own. I don't even know. It's the aniseed, isn't it?
Is that what Pernod is? I have no idea.
Pernod's aniseed.
I've never
it's
had
horrible.
It. But yeah, we already know from other episodes Del orders weird combinations and strange drinks. So we're going to get the setup for the story quite quickly here, because only the second line Trigger says is,
"You'll never guess who I just saw. It was your ex-fiancée."
Oh yeah, which one?
Pauline.
So we quickly learn that perhaps Del has had a colourful love life. We haven't seen that really much of this yet, or any, I don't think, mentionings of it, have we?
No, not to this point, not that I recall. That's what I'm saying. I think this is the time that we really established that Del has been engaged lots of times before.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. So Trigger tells him that it was Pauline, and Del immediately reacts to this. He's quite surprised, taken aback, and he shows vulnerability, because we get the impression that he is swallowing some feelings. He brushes it off.
Pauline Harris? No, you must have been mistaken. She got married to that Bobby Finch, didn't she? And she went to live abroad.
Yeah?
Well, who's that sitting over there, then?
But Trigger points her out. Del climbs up on the bar to have a look, and he is definitely emotionally affected when he realizes that it is her. It says in the script that she was the great love of Del's life, a love that has still not died. So I have to question this a little bit here. I know that's in the script, so that's not something that's laid out to the audience, but is she the great love of Del's life? I mean, like, we don't...
Or doesn't he say which one when he says one of your ex-fiancés is over there?
Yeah, and I know that he got... I mean, you haven't watched Rock and Chips, but he gets engaged a lot, and he gets engaged to just random girls in Rock and Chips, but not random, but girls he, like, just met, which I guess is something that happened a lot back then. I don't know. But Del has a lot of ex-fiancés, and you can tell Del's a sensitive guy. I mean, I do feel like he does show a lot of vulnerability in the first half of this episode. He seems to really have been in love with Pauline, but we'll discuss it later, but he quickly drops his feelings and seems afraid of her quite quickly. So I don't... And the way he runs away quite quickly as well. I don't know if... I feel like when you're young, if you get into a relationship and you break up within a month, you don't really have time to be the great love of your life. Like, it could be lust, you know? It could be just like a very strong, unfinished business kind of feeling that you have, but I don't know about love.
I think you're right. It probably isn't love, but the memory of a relationship that was like that was a whirlwind, that was really intense, it does stay with you. I think both you and I can speak from our own experience there to say that we've both been in sort of these very passionate and short relationships in the past where the memory lives on for a long time after it. And if you're a sentimental person like I am, sometimes it can linger for many, many years after the relationship is over, to the point where, you can still feel something even if you see that person, you know, a long time after. So and with Del being such a sensitive person, which we, you know, discover many times after this episode as well as in this episode, I think it's logical that he would be able to jump straight back into something, because ultimately as well, the way she is with him, she's so affectionate right away, and that would make him feel very good and very secure, and it's natural that he'd jump right back in. But he does also say at the end of the episode,
somehow it wasn't quite the same.
Maybe there's that wishful thinking element to it, that he really wants it to be the same, so he's willing to give it another chance, and then he throws himself into it, and maybe that's why he's able to walk away quite quickly, because he realizes that he was just faking the feelings to try and get it back to where he wants it to be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody feels that way with anything that's nostalgic. They think they can recreate how you felt, but a lot of the time when you're older, that line that he says at the end, again, we're jumping ahead, but it wasn't quite the same, is something that you experience your whole life as an adult. Like, you're trying to recreate the feeling you had when you were younger, so...
I know, completely. I'm a very nostalgic person, so I completely... And well, we both are. I think it's because Jenny and I both have a lot of home movies that we made when we were kids, and we're very lucky to have that stuff. But I do think that's added to my nostalgic feelings throughout my entire life, that I'm always able to go back and look at the past in great detail, whereas I guess a lot of people our age aren't really able to do that, since a lot of people didn't have home video cameras in the mid-80s like we did.
Yeah, probably not. Okay, let's jump back in. So Del says straight away to Trig.
It's at moments like this when I wish I carried an emergency capsule of Brute around with me.
So Trigger realizes that Del is still interested in Pauline, and he immediately gives us a little backstory here.
Leave it out, will you, Del? You don't want to get yourself involved with her again. Remember what happened last time?
So I wrote here as a note, we're getting a little bit more depth added to Del and Trigger's friendship here, because we're finding out later that this was some 20 years ago. So Del and Trigger's friendship is now being... we're seeing that it's a long friendship, and Trigger's actually a concerned friend. He's not just some market trader or some business contact of Del's. We didn't get much of that explained in Big Brother last time we saw Trig. Now we know, and he also knows his personal business. So Del turns away from Pauline and asks Trigger,
Did she ask about me?
Yeah, she seemed very concerned to know how much she was earning.
How the hell do you do that?
Del looks at Trigger in confusion, clearly thinking he just said the line in a funny voice, but then quickly realizes it was Joyce. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. I think it's just the look.
No, that line makes me laugh a lot as well.
On Trigger's face. That's all it is, really. It's just the way Trig's just like looking down at Del.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do
Trig's
that?
gormless face is a very funny as he pulls it throughout the episode. When she kisses him, he's got the blackcurrant and she's wiping it away, and then we look back at Trig and we just see his gormless face sort of looking over. It's very funny.
You just stepped on my note from the future now, but yeah. So Del says to Trigger and Joyce,
It's all right. I'm not going to get involved, am I? I'm too shrewd for all that, am I? Eh?
We also see here that the barmaid from the local pub knows all of Del's personal business. So we're getting this world built for us a little bit here, where we're seeing that, it's a little community of people where they all know each other. Maybe Joyce was even around back then, which is,
I was going to say, because it sounds to me like she knows about Pauline as well.
You want your brains testing.
Yeah.
That means she knows about this woman. How would she know if they weren't old friends?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's a shame Pauline disappeared, because she's clearly been friends with Del for a long time.
Oh, you mean Joyce?
Oh, yeah, Joyce.
I was going to say, it's a good thing Pauline disappears.
Yes,
we don't want her.
No, yes, we don't want Pauline. Okay, so speaking of Pauline, we're about to get introduced to Pauline. So Pauline was played by actress Jill Baker, who had already worked with David Jason in the past several times before she filmed this. She said she loved playing Pauline. What a bitch. And the cast were all lovely and very in tune with all of it. So she was a little bit worried about recording in front of a live audience, but she said that was quite scary. And she wasn't quite sure whether she should play to the camera or the audience, but she said the audience response really helped with the performance. So that's interesting because, yeah, as a viewer, when you're younger, you never think about the audience, but they are there. And I think it does make a difference to the performance of the actors.
Oh, absolutely. As an actor, I can tell you that's true. If you've got a good audience, it really does help your performance a lot. You feed off the energy of the audience. And if it's a comedy as well, the laughter really makes a huge difference. Because if the audience don't laugh, you absolutely cack yourself on the stage because you're like, that's meant to be funny and no one's laughing. Oh, my God. And you do start to change the way you perform based on that reaction.
I'm sure they got a lot of that in the early series because of the developing scripts and stuff. But yeah, Del chooses to ignore Trigger and Joyce's warnings, and he heads across the Nag's Head to see Pauline, and he drinks the blackcurrant and Pernod as he gets all the blackcurrant all over his lips. So this is what you were mentioning earlier. He greets Pauline, and she immediately gives Del a big long kiss. She gets a blackcurrant all over her face, so they both wipe it off each other, and this is when he looks back over at Trigger and see that he has a hilarious look of confusion on his face. So I wrote here in my notes that this is just an early sign of Roger Lloyd Pack's incredible ability to be hilarious without saying a word, because Trigger a lot of the time has some great lines and some memorable things that he says, but he also has the most scenes where he does comedy without saying a word and is the funniest character. He's so good.
Yeah,
I'm just
agree.
thinking of the bit in Jolly Boy's Outing where he walks all the different directions and stuff when he's trying. Just little things like that just stick in your mind. And yeah, the way that he's in what's considered the funniest moment of Only Fools and Horses ever, in the bar falling over scene. And he doesn't say anything either. He just looks around. It's just his look on his face.
Yeah, a lot of people say that's even funnier. The Trigger's reaction to Del standing up is even funnier than Del falling, some people say. So yeah, I agree.
They've got great chemistry, Roger Lloyd Pack and David Jason.
Yes.
So we're going to get a little bit of back and forth between Del and Pauline, where we learn that Bobby Finch died. Pauline moved back from the US and became an air hostess. She starts asking Del questions about his life. She asks,
"You never married yourself, Del?"
No, I never fancied myself.
which should be a pretty bad joke, but it's David Jason's delivery that nails it, I think. Also, the fact that Del's character would make a bad joke like that, so it fits quite nicely in. Del admits...
I mean, what I mean is, I never met a girl that I cared all that much about, really, Well, I mean, there was one.
But you don't see her?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm looking at her now.
So immediately after less than 2 minutes, they're holding hands, they're about to kiss. Rodney appears looking super tall and scruffy and says,
Where's my pork scratchings?
So Rodney lets us know quite quickly he does remember Pauline. We're learning quickly that Pauline remarried and her second husband also died. So Del says...
About that, isn't that a shame, eh, Rodney? She had 2 husbands die on her.
Yeah, one more, she keeps a match ball.
Pauline exits the powder her nose, and Rodney angrily tells Del that he remembers how much Pauline screwed him up the first time. Yeah, straight away, Del is getting the 3rd degree from Rodney. So, like, just as we were discussing before, Rodney and Del seem to quite quickly thwart each other's romantic pursuits.
Yes. I think Rodney here comes off as a really huge kid.
Yeah.
Not just because Nick Lyndhurst looks the tallest I've ever seen him in the scene when he walks over to the... I think it's because they're sitting down. It just makes it even worse. He looks absolutely gigantic in the scene when he walks over to the table.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah.
Because also you've got the line where Del says...
You remember Rodney? He should be a little scruff. Look at him now. He's a big scruff, isn't he?
It's deliberate, to show that he's super tall and towering over Del.
I do love the way that Nicholas Lyndhurst actually does portray the moody teenager thing. He does it very well. Even though he's in his early 20s here, he always seems to revert to the moody teenager very well when he's having a fight with Del. And I love that. I think it's very funny the way that he does it.
Yeah, definitely. So Rodney and Del are alone at the table at this point, and Del tells Rodney...
It was a long time ago, Rodney, wasn't it? Pauline and me were engaged. We was mods. The only reason she left me was because she found a bloke with a faster Vespa.
He says they were mods, which is referring to the mod subculture in London in the late 50s and 60s, which was focused on music and fashion. Subculture has its roots in like small groups of stylish London-based young men and women in the late 50s who were called modnists because they listened to modern jazz. Another element of the subculture was the motor scooters, such as the Vespa. So they're basically explaining sort of the situation around the time that Del and Pauline were together. And if you watch Rock and Chips, you can kind of see that they were all into like the Vespas and stuff. He's basically saying like that they were kids, they broke up for a silly reason. And I think he's trying to justify it to himself to some degree as well. Like, we broke up for a silly reason, but look at us, we're both adults now. This could actually work out. He does say to Rodney that he tries to explain his feelings, but in the end he tells him,
I know you're concerned for me, and I know you're trying to give me your advice, but how can I put it? Shove it, Rodney.
They're back to their original old brother relationship there, so...
And Del here also says a few derogatory things to Rodney about his own women that he dates, or girls that he dates, I suppose.
What do you know about it anyway? What do you know? I am talking about men and women, I am. You're still knocking about with brownies.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Leave it out. Some of your dates arrive by skateboard.
That's how they are, so back and forth, you always trying to insult each other's dates and girlfriends and situations, so...
Yes.
So we'll move on unless you've got any other notes about the Nag's Head. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we cut to Nelson Mandela House, which is later that same night. We're back at the Trotter flat. Happy to see Grandad back after his absence last week. We missed him. He's watching TV. Rodney's lying on the settee reading a magazine. Grandad comments that Del is late. And we're told that Grandad has his own memories of Del's previous relationship with Pauline.
It's bad news in meeting her again this afternoon. I remember the last time she hooked him. I mean, up till then, we was doing all right. Well, your mum had died and your dad had run off and left you.
But other than that, tickety-boo.
Right. Del was out wheeling and dealing and we was coming along nice. Then she turned up. I never seen anyone change so fast as Del boy. He was besotted with her. They was engaged within the week, broke up within the month. Little cow was out skylarking around with other fellas. Del had more fights than John Wayne.
Interesting little fact here that a lot of fans do know already, but that Grandad has a line here that ends up being the story for the Miracle of Peckham.
But he always give the church a good few quid towards their fund for a new roof. He said it was a penance, seeing as I was in what nicked the old one.
So that doesn't come back until series 5, but yeah, it's interesting to see that little one of John Sullivan's early ideas.
Although technically Del did not steal the roof, he bought the stolen roof off other people.
That's right. Off Sunglasses Ron and Paddy the Greek.
Ron and Paddy the Greek. Yeah.
So then Del gets home drunk. It says here in the script that he's slightly sloshed. So I think David Jason played that up a little bit because he's more than slightly sloshed. He arrives at the door cheering, and when he opens the door, it slams into Rodney's feet and immediately bounces back into his face. That is not in the script. I don't think it was an accident because you can see Nick Lyndhurst's feet kick the door if you look closely. But anyway, it's a great episode. I mean, a great moment in the episode. So he announces...
Gentlemen and Grandad, I have an announcement to make. Pauline and I are engaged to be married.
After a few hours. So Rodney and Grandad do...
With zero reaction from Grandad and Rodney when he first says it.
Because Rodney had told Grandad to not react, but they both seem very... they try not to react right away. It does seem a little bit for a second like Del's going to be able to talk Rodney into having a drink and celebrate, but when he says...
Not only have I got engaged to Pauline, but my bride-to-be has kindly condescended to come and live with us.
They get very upset. Rodney storms out. They make their feelings very clear.
I would too.
Grandad insinuates that Del's going to get killed by what he says. So they're both kind of saying they call her a gold digger. So, already we know their feelings. So we cut to the next scene, and it's a very quick transition of time. We have to assume a couple of weeks have passed at this point because Pauline's moved in.
Yes.
It's evening. Del's eating a massive plate of food. Pauline's sitting on the settee in the background filing her nails, and Rodney and Grandad are in the armchairs watching TV. Rodney puts his feet up on the table, and Pauline immediately pipes up.
I cleaned that table today.
Good. Won't make my plimsolls dirty, will it?
Del.
What? Rodney.
So we've only had one line exchanged, and we already see the dynamic that has been created here. Pauline gets her way because of Del. So a quick exchange of dialogue here where we see that Pauline has been given the housekeeping money, but she's really only looking after her and Del. She refuses to cook for Rodney and Grandad. She did get food for them, but not stuff that they like. Also, we learn that she has hidden poor Grandad's teeth.
What's up with you then, eh?
It's her, innit?
What?
She's in my teeth.
Yeah. What you hidden his teeth for then, Petal?
Oh, you don't know what it's like in this place. Well, you and Rodney are out the auctions of the market, but I'm stuck here with him. He's nibbling all day long. There'll be nothing left if I let him carry on. Don't worry. He gets his teeth back at meal times.
And I put in my notes here, how does she get his teeth off him after meals? Does she,
I
pry them out of
agree.
his
That's
mouth?
I mean, at night time it would make sense because he puts them next to his bed. But yes, all the other times, unless he takes them out every time he's finished eating, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he does.
She's like, she's going to give him back at mealtimes. So how does she get them off him when he's finished eating his breakfast, for example? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how often you take your teeth out when you have false teeth.
Oh God, I hope I never find out.
I mean, we all will.
The idea of having to take my teeth out is just a horrible thought.
I mean, I don't think it's as bad as you'll think, but who knows? So Pauline is already showing discontent. She tries to get Rodney and Grandad to go out. She complains that they're never left alone, and at this point, she suggests that Grandad should be in a home. Rodney starts getting very defensive.
Well, wouldn't he be happier with company of his own age?
You're not bringing your granny round here to live with us, are you?
I was thinking of a home.
He's already got a home.
Can't put him in a home, Pauline. He's family.
But I'll be your family soon.
Well, you going in home then?
So I put in my notes here that Rodney and Grandad, this is the first time we see them working in union, really, and Rodney is very protective of Grandad and their family, which is really sweet to see.
Yes, he does. He almost takes on the role of Del in other episodes. Del seems to always be the one protecting the family unit in other episodes, but Rodney's takes that upon himself in this one.
And at least one trotter is
Del
always
has
doing
absconded.
that. Yeah, like protecting the family dynamic. So when one of them falls away, the other will always stand up for the family.
It seems to be a way that it's something they use to guilt trip each other always throughout the series.
Yeah, and no matter where they go, what relationships they go in, they're always trying to bring each other back on track to this family that they have and make that the priority.
I mean, that's where the mom said on a deathbed trope comes from, because that's the guilt to get them to always back down and come back and do what Del says in that situation. But yeah.
Okay. So Pauline's going to start using the situation in the flat to act manipulative, and she suggests,
Well, the only alternative is for us to buy a house of our own.
What, me? Buy a house? No, I couldn't do that. Couldn't do that. Don't you see that as soon as I put my signature on a document, the authorities are going to know that I'm alive? Oh. Be round here after their pound of flesh quicker than the mafia.
But you can do what my other husbands did. Put the house in my name.
I wrote here, plot hole, how is he going to get life insurance then?
Yeah, those sorts of things I guess they didn't think about too much. But of course he doesn't end up getting the life insurance, so maybe
he does not,
that was the reason.
He also wouldn't be able to get life insurance because he doesn't have any income for them to look at. If his name isn't down on any paperwork and he hates doctors, he won't have any medical records for them to look at. He wouldn't be able to get life insurance. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, they're not gonna focus on that. But I also wrote here, he's actually a terrible target for Pauline. If she is a gold digger, he would be one of the worst people for her to do this with. He's got no money really, and he can't. He wouldn't be able to get a very big life insurance policy. He doesn't have anything to his name. He doesn't have any assets. Usually
he doesn't even own anything.
Yeah, I mean, he has the van, but then so I don't know about
imagine if that's what
I don't know about back then, but now the life insurance that you get is usually to the value of to pay off your house. Like if you die, so you would say if you have 100,000 left on your mortgage, you would get a £100,000 life insurance policy. So what's Dell going to get insured for? He doesn't have a house. He doesn't have any property. So yeah, let's just ignore and gloss over all that for the sake of the story. Maybe she wasn't a gold digger.
This is what I was about to say. There is something else. We don't actually find out, and maybe you've commented on this later so we can talk about it more. We don't actually find out if Pauline really was trying to kill Dell or if she was just protecting herself or trying to protect herself. I mean, we don't really know. Obviously, it's implied that she murdered her previous husbands, but there's no evidence of that. There's no proof of that. And we don't know that she's trying to murder Dell. And Grandad and Rodney both admit to making up the story about it.
Yeah.
So chances are she wasn't actually trying to kill Dell. Of course, it's all implied to make it look that way. Even the way she talks sounds like she's trying to kill him.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
so this little line here where she just says,
"Have you got your life insured, Dell?"
No, never thought about dying before.
Well, we'll have to sort that out. A wife needs protection.
Especially with your luck, Pauline.
So yeah, the lines and the way that it's written definitely makes the viewer think, yes, Pauline's a gold digger, but you're right. We do touch upon this later, but we don't know this. This is just what we were led to believe. So Pauline, I mean, we do see that they have that Dell and Rodney, oh my gosh, Dell and Pauline have a great sex life. Because
that would have been a very different
Rodney
show.
says that
Wouldn't it?
they've been in the bedroom a lot, and then at the end of the scene, Pauline fancies an early night, so she drags Dell out. We get another tea spilling joke where Dell's saying,
Yes.
Listen, you two. Hey!
Cut to the following morning, and Grandad's all dressed up, ready to leave the flat for the first time in Only Fools and Horses history. He's actually got his jacket on, probably over the clothes that he always wears. So we learn that Rodney and Grandad are planning to leave before Dell gets up. They agree that they're going to stay and say goodbye. Pauline comes in with a big plate of food, and she stops Rodney going into his mother's bedroom, which I felt so sorry for Rodney at this point.
I'll wake him, Rodney. I don't want you going in that room.
That's my mum's room.
It used to be your mum's room, Rodney, but it's mine now, and I don't want to see you in there. Is that understood?
Yeah, it's really sad to think that he can't go in his own mum's bedroom. And again, he seems like a little kid when he says, "That's my mum's room." But yeah.
Yeah, very much
They've
so.
made Pauline very mean from this point on. She basically is just telling Rodney to shut up. That's all of her line.
Well, she's even worse when Dell's not there. I mean, this is the only exchange we see between them when Dell's not actually there in the room. And she's horrible.
Yeah, she's
yeah,
like a
really
wicked
horrible.
stepmother character at this point. She's just so mean. So after she leaves the room, Rodney and Grandad discuss.
That's why he's been looking a bit seedy lately.
Yeah, and it's hardly through lack of food, is it? I mean, look, there are third world nations who give up their mineral rights for what's on that plate. I wonder what happened to his fried slice.
Perhaps he didn't want it. His stomach's been a bit dicky, hasn't it?
That's true.
And this is a little bit of a plot hole because at this point they would have already told Trigger to call and lie about the food poisoning. So
yeah, I agree. That if Dell had been there when they had that conversation, it would have made sense to the plot. But the fact that he wasn't doesn't make sense. I completely agree with you. I thought that as well when I was watching the episode.
Yeah, that's when the phone rings and it's Trigger. So yeah, we later find out that this is planned. So yeah, it would have made no sense at all for Rodney and Grandad to have that line. So Rodney calls for Dell.
Pauline, untie Dell, will you? He's wanted.
And Dell comes in wearing his silk robe pajamas, and I wrote here perhaps Pauline's slippers because he's wearing like pink fluffy slippers.
Yes.
At this point, I noticed that the calendar is gone off the wall. Oh no! It was there earlier.
Pauline would have took
so
it.
We still know
Pauline would have taken
Pauline
it down.
Probably took it down because obviously women can't stand to see other naked women around. bullshit. But I noticed here that the calendar's gone is what I wrote, but I did notice that it was there earlier in the show, and it is still on the same month. So Big Brother through second time around is all within 1 month at the moment.
Or there is another explanation that Del and Rodney forget to flip their calendar, because I know a lot of people used to do that.
No, that's not it.
I used to do that sometimes with my Simpsons calendar. I mean, no one really uses, well, I know most people don't use physical calendars anymore, probably.
I do.
But when I used to have one for Christmas every year, I used to forget to flip it some months. Probably not as long as
Maybe
they did.
Maybe they just really liked that picture, but they do flip it later. So, and I still have a physical calendar.
Yeah, so maybe they remembered
because charities send you them. Maybe not in Hong Kong, but I get like 5 calendars a year sent from charities. So I put them up because otherwise, what else are you going to do with them?
Oh yeah, I don't get sent any. I occasionally buy them from charities, but other than that,
yeah. Okay, so Pauline's leaving.
I'm just popping down to the jeweller's, put a deposit on that ring I saw. Don't forget you've got to arrange a medical for your life insurance. I'll see you down the estate agents. We can go on to the bank from there.
So we're only hearing Del's side of the phone conversation at the moment, but he ends up telling Trigger...
Well, listen, Trig. Why don't you mind your own bloody business, eh? Who do you think you are interfering, eh? Look, you just keep your nose out of it, all right, pal?
He comes off the phone and we learn that Trigger told him that Pauline's first husband died of food poisoning. They all look at the plate of food. Del tries to brush it off and just says that he's going on a diet. Grandad and Rodney tell him that they're leaving and they're going to form a partnership. Del tries to lighten the mood a little bit, but ultimately they are going to leave. So they say they're going to Auntie Rose's in Clacton. We can definitely see that Trigger's comment has gotten under Del's skin because he calls out to Rodney.
Rodney?
We're not coming back, Del.
No, hang about, I'm coming with you.
And then we cut to a cute little small cottage and the 3-wheel van pulls up outside. The Trotters ring the doorbell and a sweet little old lady answers the door. She does look kind of shocked, but they all file into the house anyway with their stuff. The next scene is later that evening and the Trotters look nice and settled in at Auntie Rose's. Grandad's watching TV and Del and Rodney are both eating big plates of food. I wrote here that this reminds me of Nan's house.
Yes, I was going to say, even Auntie Rose reminds me of Nanny Sylvie.
Yeah, she does a little bit rhyme Nanny Sylvie.
She's got the same sort of physicality as Nanny Sylvie used to have.
Such a sweet little old lady. And the conversation at the dinner table is basically Del telling Rodney that he just left Pauline a note telling her that he was leaving. Rodney does say at this point,
God knows what we'll go back to. She most probably smashed that flat to pieces.
And I wrote here, yeah, like kind of silly of them to just abandon the flat, but maybe they just didn't think that Pauline would do anything really bad, but then they think she's going to kill Del. So, and I wrote,
no, it is a very weird way to do it. I agree. I mean, surely the logical thing to do would be for them to stay there, and when she comes back, all 3 of them confront her and make her leave. I mean, she wouldn't be able to physically take on, you know, even Del and Rodney, or even Del probably. Yeah. So it does seem a bit ridiculous that they left and ran away and left her to do whatever to the flats. It is a bit strange.
Also, I mean, Del should have just broken up with her properly. I mean, this is the 80s version of breaking up with a text message, right? Just wrote up with a little note.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, but obviously we know he's afraid of her, but he should be able to break up with her properly. To just leave, hide away, and leave her a letter is definitely a dick move. But then we're seeing Del's lack of courage, and we discussed this in Go West, Young Man, that they aren't very good at handling women. They don't know how to talk to them and how to take serious situations. Like they don't know how to do it. So he's running away basically. But if they thought she was a murdering gold digger, I do understand why they're running away.
Yes,
but yeah,
true.
Then like why didn't
really
they think
that.
She's going to do something terrible with the flat? But either way. So Auntie Rose enters and she's serving them dinner. Del gives her some money and tells her,
Now listen, Auntie. We're going to be here for about 5 days. So what I want you to do is you take this money here like that, put that in your pinny, because I don't want you spending your own money on us, all right?
Well, that's very nice of you. Do you mind if I ask you something?
Well, of course not. Mener d'etre. No, far away.
Who are you?
Who are we?
You mean we've been in your house for 5 hours, had all your shepherd's pie and had a bath each, and you don't know who we are?
Well, I didn't like to ask because you seem to know me.
Del explains that they're Joni's boys. This is incidentally the first time, I think, anyway, that we learn the name of Del and Rodney's parents, Joan and Reg.
Yes.
Grandad has a funny line here.
You said come down any time.
When was this then?
1947.
So it's quickly becoming apparent to the audience that she's not their auntie. They don't realise it until she says,
Funny you should mention it, though, because the lady what owned the cottage before me, she came from Peckham.
Auntie Rose has moved.
Well, who's this then?
God knows.
but they realise that she knows another Joni, so they play along. And they end up saying they're going to stay anyway. I wrote here that this is something that, like, our Nan would have done. Like, and I think maybe back in those days, if some of our friends had shown up, for example, she would have been, yeah, let me cook them dinner and let them sit in my living room.
It's true.
And it's a shame.
I think people were more trusting back then, I think, for this sort of situation. I mean, obviously they've been there 5 hours and they've not done anything bad, or they've not, obviously, other than taking over a house. She probably felt safe enough with them that she wasn't worried about them staying regardless. If they'd been, really horrible or abusive the second they arrived, it might have been a different story.
Yeah, and like, I thought about this a little bit because I wrote here that it's heartwarming and also sad, because you wouldn't be able to do this now at all. Like, I think.
No.
I remember when we were kids, and like, it was very common, and it probably still is very common for elderly people to get targeted by people saying they're there to read the gas meter, or they're coming over and they manipulate old people. They get into their homes, and once they're in, because it happened to Nan, didn't it? Like,
yeah, it did happen to our Nan.
So she let the guy in because he said he was reading the gas meter or the electric meter, and then he attacked her and stole stuff from the house.
It was his mate ran upstairs because she took him through to the kitchen, and then his mate came in through the door after they'd gone through and went upstairs and started ransacking the place. And then when his mate was done and came down the stairs, then the guy who originally said he was from the gas also pushed her over and then ran out after as well. Yeah. So it was two of them, I remember.
Yeah, and like, so nowadays you got to have that little lock on your door. You got to see ID, and even ID isn't anything to be trusted.
No.
It's a horrible.
Very easy to fake ID.
Yeah, so it's almost like we're seeing a little bit of a window into a time here where that didn't happen. I don't know if it didn't happen, but it certainly wasn't as it is now, which is such a shame.
Yeah, a more wholesome time, I think.
But I love the way that the Trotters, especially Del is like,
That'll be smashing, Auntie. Thank you.
and like giving her the money and gives her a hug. Like, he's looking after her because he knows she's going to look after him for the next 5 days, and there's absolutely nothing bad about it. Like, he's not scary, and I long for it to be like that now. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. It would be a better world.
So, final cut for the episode, back to the Trotter flat. They're coming back to see what's happened while they've been gone. They cautiously enter, but Del shoves Rodney and Grandad in front of him as he comes in. He warns.
Yeah, it's so funny when he says,
I'll take the living room. Rodney, you take the bedroom. Grandad, you take the kitchen.
You've got to go through the living room to get to the kitchen and the bedrooms. Yeah. So basically, Del has no risk at all.
And he says that she could be hostile, but yeah, he does this a lot, doesn't he? Like, he pushes Rodney and Grandad in front of him all the time. But anyway, nothing happened. They go in, they observe that the flat is clean and tidy. Del does worry for a second when he sits down in the chair and then hesitates, and then he's like,
Hey, wait. No. That'd be daft. Where would she get a bomb from, right?
As if she put a bomb under the chair. But yeah, Rodney finds the letter addressed to...
It's addressed to that no-good lying two-faced creepo.
Oh, that'll be for me, Rodney.
So they all read the letter together, so we, the audience, do not get to hear what she wrote. We do get a nice moment of vulnerability here where Rodney seems concerned that Del may have actually really loved Pauline. That's where they admit that they put Trigger up to the call. Because Del kind of says he's brushing it off, and he says he's not really cut out for falling in love, and I think that's where Rodney feels guilty, because he realizes he thinks Del is blaming himself for this whole thing, and that's when they decide to admit it. Del seems really angry at first. Grandad says,
"It was nothing to do with me, Del. I only suggested it."
But Del's anger is short-lived, and he gives him a big hug, and yeah.
Well, there's also something else, a bit of a plot point. Why didn't they tell him when they were in Clacton?
Yes.
That they made all this up. It's a bit weird they left it until they got back to the flat.
Well, I think it's because Rodney didn't tell him until he saw that Del was starting to sort of blame himself a little bit. I think that's why. Because they could have gotten away with it, and Del would have just been sad and thought, oh, I'm not cut out for falling in love. And I think that's the reason, because Rodney sees Del blaming himself when it is not his fault.
I just wonder what they talked about the whole time they were in
Yeah.
Clacton, because
And I also
they were away
I kind
for
of wonder,
6
like
days.
if Del thinks, sorry, if Rodney thinks that Del's going to be upset and blame himself, then telling him the truth doesn't actually help, because it kind of will make him think maybe he could have been happy with Pauline.
Yeah, and I got screwed over by Rodney and Grandad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was just one more thing I wanted to mention. One in my notes I wrote down. Nobody checked Grandad's room when they ran into the flat.
Oh, they didn't?
To see if Pauline was
I
there.
did not notice.
Well, he says check the bedrooms, but Rodney comes, I mean, presumably, because Rodney goes straight over to the left-hand side, which is the other bedroom. So, and then he comes out of those bedrooms, indicating that no one's been in Grandad's room. So Pauline could have been in there with a
Yes, I didn't
with a
notice
knife or
that.
something.
Interesting. Yeah, Pauline could have been in there with a weapon or something, because they make it sound like Pauline is dangerous, but again, we don't see that. They reach the end of the letter, and they do realize that Pauline has taken a little bit of revenge. She called the talking clock for revenge. I didn't know this, but Tim is TIM for 846, which is what you dial for the talking clock. So I didn't know that. Grandad notices that...
I did not know that.
I always just thought he must have been called Tim the talking clock, which he was, but Tim does mean the number that you dial. Grandad notices
I didn't know there was a talking clock until I watched this episode of Any Fools and Horses. I didn't know what that
apparently
was.
there still is a talking clock. I can't even ever imagine a need for calling one, but there must have been a need at some point.
Well, it's the talking. It's to find out the time in other countries. So I suppose before mobile phones and the internet and stuff, that would have been useful if you wanted to find out the time in America, or if you were trying to call someone.
I don't think that's the reason for it. It's to find out the current time. They have
because it's the talking clock in America. He calls,
Yeah,
so
but
presumably it's American
But
time.
that's not the reason that Tim existed. Tim was created so that you could find out the time where you are. She just happened to call the Tim in America. The purpose of the talking clock was so that you could just call and find out what time it was, which seems to me like a very archaic thing. Like, I don't know.
It seems a bit redundant, especially if it charges you a packet, because they imply that it does. I mean, I would have thought there would have been much cheaper ways to find out the time.
Like getting a watch. But anyway, Grandad notices that Tim has a funny accent, and they realize that it's the Tim from America. So they realize that Grandad doesn't understand at first, so he's so busy like on the phone.
You're connected to America? It's amazing, isn't it? Hello!
Hang it up!
And that's the final line of the episode. So we get the old end credit music kicking in. I wrote here that I think it was a pretty weak ending, because I would have really loved to have seen Pauline come back and maybe find out what happened, and maybe see Del have a confrontation with Pauline, or maybe
it would have been nice to see Pauline again.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. Or even get Trigger involved, have a few more funny bits there with him being part of the plan. I agree with you. The ending did let it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's probably the weakest thing in the episode, because I do like the rest of the episode. I mean, I rated it quite high, but I think if I had a chance now to sort of see an alternative ending, I would love to see Pauline, because we don't see anything more of her, and we don't get to hear what she wrote in the letter, and we just get to see this fairly mean trick that she plays that costs them money. But that's I know that's like hitting Del where it hurts, but it could have been something more.
I don't think she's never even mentioned again, from my recollection, in any later episodes when he talks about old fiancés and stuff.
I don't remember. Is her
Pauline
name not
again.
brought up in the list when they're trying to guess who in the Lewisham Grove story in Fatal Extraction?
I actually watched Fatal Extraction recently, and I don't remember her name being mentioned in that episode. So, but I could be wrong too. So, but yeah. But either way, even if she's only mentioned that one time, it's very weak mention for a character we actually got to meet.
Yeah. But again, I mean, in the grand scheme of Del's life, they were together for a month, and then we don't know how long passed here, but we have to assume a few weeks, even though the calendar didn't change. Small part of his life overall in the end, even though it said in the script she was the love of his life. So that's it. That's all I have for episode breakdown. So unless you have any more notes, shall we move on to our
No, that's everything.
awards for this week?
And guess what? He's only one.
Okay, so our awards. So as always, we have 3 awards to announce this week, and we will start with our plonker of the week.
What's a plonker?
So for plonker of the week, we will each nominate a plonker, and we will discuss and decide who wins the award. So Jenny, do you want to tell us who your plonker nomination is for this week?
Yeah, I'm just going to nominate Pauline, because of how mean she is. I don't think we can assume she was a gold digger or a murderer, but I just think she was just very mean the way she acted towards Rodney. So I'm nominating Pauline.
Okay, now mine is more a sign of the times, and we just discussed this, but I'm nominating Auntie Rose.
Aw.
Because in this day and age, if she were to do what she did, she would be a ridiculous plonker. Because letting 3 people come into your house and stay that you don't actually know and have no confirmation of who they are is arguably one of the most stupid things you could possibly do in this day and age. But as you mentioned, in that time, well, no, I suppose even then it was pretty stupid. I mean, they could have been anybody, and you're a woman living alone. You know, overall, that was a really stupid thing to do on her part. I can't overlook that, I'm afraid.
But poor little Auntie Rose, and she's a little old sweet lady.
Yes, I know, she's lovely, of course she is, but her intentions are good, but it is really stupid to do what she did.
I don't like to use the word stupid for a vulnerable senior citizen, so yeah, naive is fine,
apologies.
yeah.
She was naive to do what she did.
But I still think, you can't say that she's worse than Pauline, probably.
So Pauline is a horrible person. That's definitely undisputed. But plonker to me says someone that does things that are foolish. That's kind of what the meaning most comes across to me. If it was a bitch of the week award, it would go to Pauline, obviously, or like who's the meanest. But plonker,
we could give Pauline the plonker award just for being stupid enough to target Del for a gold digger scheme.
That's true. As another reason, yes, that might work as a reason to give it to Pauline.
Because another thing about, like, I mean, not saying that this is a crash course on how to be a gold digger, but another way to be successful if she was going to be a gold digger is you don't go after someone who's got immediate family living with them who are dependent on their income. You just don't do that. You go after people who are single.
Well, she did try and drive them out.
She did, but she
did try and drive them out, and she was successful because they were about to leave.
Yeah, but she shouldn't have bothered targeting him though. She should have just targeted some rich single guy who had like no family.
Yeah, of course. I agree with you. What you said earlier is absolutely right. Del has no collateral. He has nothing that would be able to. Nothing he'd be able to give to Pauline after he died. He'd be worthless after he died.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel guilty giving the plonker to Auntie Rose, don't you? She's like Nanny Sylvie.
All right, then we'll give it to Pauline since Auntie Rose is a nice person.
All right.
But I still maintain that is one of the most ridiculous things you could ever do. What she did. So
Rose.
Plonker of the week is Pauline.
Just shut it, Rodney.
Well done, Pauline. Woo.
Okay, well done, Pauline. So Jenny, you have chosen the best line of the episode. Could you tell us what that line is, please?
Yeah, for me, the best line of the episode is the one more and she keeps the match ball.
Yes, that's a very funny line. I agree.
Yeah, so I feel like that's that.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's got some good one-liners this episode, but that one just that one made me laugh so much. It's the delivery, it's the deadpan look on his face, the way that he's staring.
Oh,
at
he's
Pauline,
so funny, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Rodney's deadpan delivery and all of those quips and things he says back to Pauline are just absolutely brilliant. I also like the when he's talking to Grandad and Grandad's giving the backstory. We mentioned it earlier, but when he says, other than that, tickety boo,
Yeah.
they're talking about their history. It's very funny.
All right, so you Heather, you've awarded best moment of the episode. So what's your best moment?
Yes. Okay, so the best moment of this episode, meaning for me the moment that made me howl with laughter when I watch it, and it always tends to be physical stuff, to be honest, the best moments, because that's the physical comedy is great, but it's when Del comes in and goes da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and then the door slams back in his face. It's just absolute, and Rodney's reaction to go, what's he done? Like, it's just absolutely hilarious. And then obviously when Del Boy comes back in looking all disheveled when he opens the door again, collecting himself, and then goes back into the da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. It's very funny.
Yeah, I don't think we said it at the time, but it's definitely true that both David Jason and Nick Lyndhurst are both really good at acting drunk. And it's not easy to do. Like, I think you'd think it'd be easy, but it's not. To actually be believably drunk as an actor is hard. Like, yeah. And they do it so naturally.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think one of the things that they also do very well is their look when they're drunk. Del always, David Jason always like mushes his hair just a little bit. And he always has a bit of a shine on his skin, like a little bit red, like that kind of, even the way they look drunk, even before they open their mouths. I think, it's very, very clever acting. Agreed.
Yeah. Any honourable mentions or?
I guess. I mean, the part where he sends them into the flat is quite funny. That initial like, go on, my son, like
and then
running
he closes
like
the
this,
door.
sort of the hesitant. And he closes the door and then opens it again and has a look for himself. That's pretty funny. I think a lot of the humor, the moment when Del is getting his lips wiped and Trigger's looking at him is very funny. I think I find that quite funny. Even Rodney saying 1 for the price of 2. I know it's an understated joke and there is no reaction from the laugh track, but I find that really funny because he says it with such confidence and no one reacts. I think that's quite funny.
Yeah. I think, I do think that IMDb was a bit hard on this one. Not IMDb itself, but 61. Yeah, it's not that bad. I mean...
I don't think it's bad.
It's not bad at all, but I mean, like, yeah, the fact that it's almost their last episode in popularity... I'm not quite sure how that happened. Like, I don't think it's down there with the episodes that most people really dislike. We won't say what they are yet, but I think everyone knows.
No.
But yeah, I think that's a very strangely low rating, and all of the others in series 1 on IMDb seem a lot higher. So yeah, I was quite surprised.
It's personal taste, I guess. I mean, we could always go on to IMDb and rate the episode higher if we want to.
Yeah, if we both vote for it, it'll probably move up in the rankings, but then maybe one of our favourites will get bumped. So we don't want to do that.
No, that's true.
I mean, again, like I say,
no, we don't.
It doesn't just because somebody voted for one episode doesn't mean they voted for another episode. So sometimes I think an episode can just be low rated because it's not people haven't watched it much or they didn't bother to rank it. So that about wraps it up for this week. Join us next week when we'll be discussing Series 1, Episode 5, A Slow Bus to Chingford. Until then...
Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, you can email us at longlivehooky street podcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces. Bonjour.